AVienneau. Ms. Vienneau is the area director for the Nashville YWCA. And let me welcome both of you, Ms. Meece and Ms. Vienneau, to the show this morning. Ms. Meece, what we'd like to do this morning is to talk about the Metropolitan Police Department and some of the things that you're doing in the area of youth services. But before we get into that conversation, let's have you and Ms. Vienneau to give us some information about your background, your education, and in your case, Captain Meece, some of the things that were important in your life in leading you to such an important responsibility as the director of a division with the Metropolitan Police Department. Let's give you an opportunity to give us that kind of information. Then we'll get into some of the problems of Nashville and youth services.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to discuss youth services. I'm a 22-year veteran of the police department, and I joined the department when I was fairly young. I was just barely old enough to be on the department, and I went initially to the patrol division, and I served 7 years there as a patrol officer, and it was I guess you could say it was a pretty enlightening experience for me, because I did not have a real sense of what crime was. I came from a small community and was raised originally in North Dakota, and that's pretty well known as a fairly low crime rate area of the country. So I spent 7 years there, and while I was in patrol, I decided that I needed to start getting an education beyond a high school degree, because all I had done was graduate from high school. So I began going to college. I got some federal assistance to do that, and I worked my way through an associate degree. And in the meantime, I ended up being transferred to the training academy, so I began working there as an instructor, and that was probably the beginning of some of the most significant learning that I really did, because we dealt not only with recruits who enter the police system, but we also dealt with sworn personnel and civilians, and I began to do a lot in the area of teaching and training, and that was real interesting for me. When I completed my associate degree, I went on to Belmont College, and I completed a bachelor's degree, and that took me a little bit longer than the norm, because I was trying to work as I was going to school. And then I went on to Murfreesboro, and I graduated from Murfreesboro with a master's degree in criminal justice. So much of the formal education I've gotten, most of it, as a matter of fact, as it relates to advanced degrees, deals specifically with police work. So I rose through the ranks at the training academy, and I rose to the position of a lieutenant, and then when I was promoted to a captain, I went on to the youth services division, and I became the commander of that division. And that was a real experience for me, because I had no specific knowledge about juvenile crime. And it was a learning experience in that I had to learn from the people that were working really for me and with me to teach me about the responsibilities that I had specifically as it related to juvenile crime. So I've been there about 6 years, and it's a constantly learning process for me, because the issue of juveniles involved in crime is kind of a constantly changing process. But it's been a real good experience, and I've come away from that with a much better understanding, I think, of children and how they behave and how they learn to behave badly and that type of thing. So that's pretty much where I'm at this point.
Very good. And I tell you, we'll have you to share some of that information in reference to youth and crime later on, after Ms. Vienneau gives us some information about her background and what led her eventually to the area directorship of the YWCA.
Great. First, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here this morning. I am a native Nashvilleian, and got my education here, but spent numerous years in New York City. I had another career as a professional dancer with the Dance Theater of Harlem, and had the opportunity to tour all over the United States and also Europe, but found myself really wanting to go back and further my education and come back to Nashville and give back to this community. So I came back. I went to Vanderbilt University, where I got my bachelor's degree in human development. And it was through that study that I realized I really wanted to focus with youth and see what I could do as far as giving back to youth and building self-esteem. I've worked over 6 years in youth services. 4 of those years have been with the YWCA. As it states, the YWCA, our focus is on women and girls, so I do have a special interest in that area, and have been very committed to providing quality services for young girls in this community.
Very good. As a matter of fact, I think that there's a new emphasis in Nashville in terms of helping young females, and we want to talk about that, Ms. Vienneau, with you this morning.